Okay, I'd like to call to order the August 10, 2023 meeting of the Architectural Review Board to order. First on the agenda is approval of minutes from our last meeting of July 13, 2023. Is there any comments from the commissioners on the meeting minutes? All right, is there a motion, please?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting minutes passed unanimously. First on our agenda, let me get myself organized here. This is not first. 600 Silver Lane, review a petition to the Zoning Commission by 600 Silver Lane LLC to construct 10 single-family homes of approximately 650 square feet each, and a modification of existing church building on site. Mr. Owen is here, and the floor is yours.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Nicholas Owen, 972 East Broadway, Stratford, maintaining business offices, development, sometimes professional presentations before all of the boards and commissions in Stratford. I'm here this evening regarding the continued petition of 600 Silver Lane LLC. At the last hearing, there was quite a bit of discussions, and our team has read through all of the comments based on those discussions, and I guess the thrust of tonight's hearing, although we will discuss some additional information as requested for the 10 single-family homes to be built on the project, but there was some question and some information based on that. We did some redesign work on the church building. Most of the discussion revolved around realigning some windows, realigning some of the accoutrements or window treatments, and aligning the windows with the garage doors. And we have come up with a new plan, taking that information garnered from this commission as discussed in a correspondence from Susmitha based on the July 13th meeting. I'm going to read from here, and we can go from there. I have also with me tonight the engineer who did some of the layout and revisions on the driveway, the entranceway, some of the parking, the lighting, and some of the paving and landscaped area. A lot of the discussion ensued among members as to whether the application should be considered independent of what happens with the church building or not. When they asked Mr. Owen and myself if the proposed modification to the existing church are part of the same project or not, the answer is yes, they are part of the same project. The planning administrator, Susmitha, read the narrative of the project provided by ourselves and state the project involves proposed construction of the private road, cul-de-sac, along with 10 single-family homes. The existing church and rectory building will be converted into units. Based on the information, members asked Mr. Owen if he would be able to make the changes, which we have, and we've agreed to come back this evening. As you can see by the plan submitted, a number of changes were made to all elevations. We have also shown all elevations, and one of the requests from one of the members of your committee was that we show the elevations of the garage, which we have shown on the plans which you currently have in possession. Part of the consideration was, and we have this issue generally at most hearings, whether it's this committee or the commissions, as to some of the exterior finishes that we currently use and that are now pretty much standard in the industry. And although we know that your committee has somewhat of an issue with vinyl siding, we do intend, and we would hope that you agree, that vinyl siding is appropriate. I think that at least on the 10 houses, we have agreed that that's what we are going to use, and it appears that the commission, although you are sullen and not mutinous to that, I think that we're going to do that. Obviously, your recommendation, your favorable recommendation on this project would be greatly appreciated. Our next hearing would be on the 22nd of this month in front of the Zoning Commission for approval of the project. This project, or this development, was part of an overall settlement with the town of Stratford on a number of different projects that we had had asked for affordable projects and other housing projects in time, which have settled 5 different lawsuits. And this is the last project which was part of that settlement agreement. With respect to the building itself, you could see that we've done the front elevation, the side elevation, and the rear elevations. The topography is a little bit, it's not challenging, but there are different levels of the topography, and you can see by the site plan that we've addressed those issues. You can also see that on the site plan, and I will have the professionals speak with that we have added a number of trees as requested, additional shrubbery, and different lighting in order to comply at least as fully as we possibly could with your board's request. At this point, I will turn this over to the site planner, and he can go over with you what we have changed, and then we can open it up to discussion unless you have some specific questions of me regarding the design or the treatment of the rectory itself.
No, I would say go ahead and complete your presentation.
Okay.
For the record, my name is Ian Eller. I represent J. Edwards and Associates, 227 Stepney Road in Easton. I want to address the specific comments that were in the minutes from July 13th. We sent a letter. I don't know if you guys got that in time to look at it, but I just want to go through the list and let you know what we did, and that these changes are all reflected in the plans that you have in front of you. Excuse me. All right, so again, these are the minutes from the July 13th meeting. There was some suggestions, and I'm going to tell you what we did with those. It said, consider adding street trees to formal rhythm along new proposed street. And we have added those. You'll see that along the road, there's both sides, runs around trees. We modified note number 3 as requested. We did add sidewalks to the plan. The issues of siding and stonework and things, those are relative to the architects, not us. We did connect the rectory to the main building that also connects to, or the church building rather, that also connects to the parking area. So you can now walk directly from there to there. We included a new walk around given the changes to the architectural plans for the church, we added a walk that goes around that building so that you get from parking easily to the entrances to those units. Lampposts are also an issue with the architects, and sidewalk. We added the access, and I think the rest, including the modifications to the church, are all based on the architect's input. Is there any other questions that I can help you with regarding the changes that we made from a site design perspective?
Well, the only thing I would ask, is, there's been a lot of drawings submitted, so I'm seeing a drawing 6.0, and which says landscape plan. I have in my packet a drawing 5.0 that says landscape plan, and a drawing 6.0 which is building elevations. I just want to make sure that what you have is matching up with what we have.
Let's see. I printed out the set that we sent you just to make sure we were on the same page, and I'm glad I did. Okay. There was some shuffling of page numbers, so he may not have the most recent set on his presentation. You should have the most recent set yours. Mine are dated. The most recent date is 8/7/23. Is that correct?
But is the landscape plan 5.0?
And landscape plan is 5.0.
Okay. So, and is it different than that in some way? than what we're looking at?
It is slightly different than that, but what I wanted to do was, so the commission can understand what we did, is show you the old one, and now you have the new one, which was submitted with this continued hearing.
Okay, so that's the old one.
Yes.
Got it, okay.
Now, I'm sorry, are you? you're all right
Just
with
for clarity, that, for example, I mentioned we modified note number 3. That is from that plan. That was the request. That there was a tree warden issue, and we either had to make a change to the plan or modify the note, and we modified the note.
Okay,
What happened, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
no.
May
go
I?
ahead.
What happens on these, and I'm sure you guys are, you find people are well aware of, once this gets to Kelly Kerrigan, she may request some different species, some different spacing on them, but we've added as much as we possibly could based on some of the information and some of the requests that you guys had. There will not be less if she makes changes. More likely, there could be more or a reconfiguration of actually how to space these and so forth and so on. The other changes with regard to parking spaces and wraparound and sidewalks, this gentleman had requested that, and we had done that. That was, it seemed to be a very important aspect of what he wanted to see, along with the rest of you good people, the elevation and the addition of the garages. You wanted to see what they look like, and that's what we did. I will tell you, I feel that just about everything on your request list, to the best of our ability and knowledge, we complied with. The only disagreement that, if we want to call it disagreement, is with the treatment with the exterior, the vinyl siding as opposed to wood siding.
Okay, so, understood. And then you're not going to make any further commentary or presentation about the church elevations, correct? Or it's vinyl siding and asphalt roof, and you don't need, you're not saying anything further about that?
We are not saying anything
Okay.
further about that.
I'm asking a question, that's fine.
Okay.
And then we had a lot of, some commentary, and I wasn't sure what you were referring to in the beginning. We had commentary about some of the aesthetics of the single-family homes. I don't see, at least I don't have anything that shows that being addressed. You're talking about center lines and windows and bays. You verbally said that, but do I have a new?
That was,
No, I know that, but I don't see a new one, do I? Do I see?
on this, on the single-family homes, there were subtle changes that would be made as to the alignment of the windows to the garage doors and so forth. That, you are not incorrect, that we will shift. Absolutely, based on your comments.
But it's not represented here. There's no changes made.
There were no changes to that. I think I made the representation that we would do that, based on your comments. And the thrust of the argument, as I recall, and I could be wrong, Mr. Chairman, was really the church. But we will make those
Yeah.
changes. If you add that comment into your, hopefully your approval, those changes will be made.
Okay, I mean, okay, I mean, I would say my comment is, I wish you brought those here so we could look at what you were planning on doing. It becomes a very, amorphous kind of comment when we make general comments about, and I had thought you had said last month that what we would see here tonight would be the church as well as a response, just like you did for the church at the site plan, that we would get an opportunity to see that, and we're not.
Well, then it's my misunderstanding, because I thought, based on my testimony, that we would move it over and align it so it looked.
I understand, but there's lots of ways to do things,
Right.
And so, we're visual people here, so
Right.
we would have preferred to have seen, what would happen here, and, it's gonna go forward, and your interpretation of what we would have liked may or may not be different than what we really intended. But if you don't have anything to show, there's really nothing further to discuss. Tom, you chiming in here?
It's like any proposal we review. if we make recommendations, we don't get a second bite at the apple.
Yeah, that's
Well-
that's what I was going to say, Jamie. We gave them the opportunity in good faith to show us that, but at least my understanding as leaving the last time was whatever doesn't get addressed visually or to our satisfaction would still be recorded. So I'd make the recommendation, let me finish quick, that we go through the list from last time ourselves. I appreciate that the site design engineer had pointed out where they think they made changes, but we have the correspondence. We as a board could go 1, 2, 3, and then if we want to take a deeper dive into the church building tonight, because there was additional information provided relative to that, that would be my recommendation. I don't know.
No, I
thoughts?
totally agree, and I think that, I kind of quick run through it, I think they have addressed our list, and I understand we don't typically get that second bite, but I left it thinking that we were going to see that and just get an opportunity to see, and I know, obviously, other projects, we don't get that chance, so be it. So I do think what we should, we have two things to do. One is we can see if their site plan has addressed the things we talked about, although that's kind of falls in the same territory. And we also, I think, need to comment on the proposed aesthetics of the church building, and I would prefer, I would vote to start there. So, Tom, you want to?
With the church.
With the church, yes.
I appreciate that you came back to us.
Not a problem.
That means a big deal to this board. There's not much to love about this church building. I'm finding it difficult to offer recommendations. I'm unfamiliar with the existing building, but what is the material of the facade material of the existing building?
It is wood.
Okay, all right. It's not the CMU block I'm seeing.
I'm sorry, it's what?
There's a texture on here that makes it look like it's CMU blocker
Right, it is currently wood, and it will be changed.
to be all vinyl.
Yes.
Your vinyl siding, okay. I guess what I would say is, for where, you have these, this is the addition, correct?
Correct.
I mean, that in itself isn't the worst thing I've ever seen. I really have a problem with the existing building that you don't seem to be making very many updates to, is that?
That's correct, we are not.
Okay,
Not to the exterior.
right. I guess I would align, these windows with the edge of the garage doors, so there's some,
Well, actually, there are,
Tom, can I jump in?
Sure.
Can the applicant, I mean, if you were given a pen, is there any way to indicate, like, what is existing, like window features and stuff like that? So we're not, I think that's where I lost some context. There was really no, all right, this is existing, this window's existing, this porch is existing. I mean, understanding the applicant's trying to work within the confines of the existing building, I found it difficult to say, okay, these windows are all there. Because if we're asking for alignment, then we're talking about knocking out walls and reconfiguration that might not be planned, if
That's
that's
fair.
fair.
well, if you look at this, these were not shown on the original plan. This is what you requested. You wanted to see the elevations, what it was going to look like
Yes.
on here.
Yep.
So this was added, and this was added.
Okay. Can you point to what's existing?
What's existing is from here to here.
Okay, so that porch is existing, those window,
Well, yes, the porch, and it's going to be refurbished and make it wider, but it's an existing porch.
okay, okay,
What you're looking at is what it's going to look like.
okay,
Now, those windows are there.
okay. I'm, for the new additions, then I'm still gonna request that the edge of the windows line up with the edge of the garage.
All right, so you want these windows to line up with the edge of the garage door then?
Yep,
So this does,
right. The other side doesn't appear.
the other side doesn't, but we can, obviously, we can line those up.
Okay,
That's
yeah,
not,
it just looks a little
Right.
prettier when things.
that's not an issue.
Okay. And you know, it's a funny looking building with the
It-
grade. It's,
yes.
you know, almost halfway out of the ground with its basement. I'm gonna request that landscaping fixes a lot of sins.
Okay?
It's, you know, one of the cheaper things you can do in terms of construction. So I would say at least plant the facade along Silver Lane and then the parking lot area. And that's gonna need to be a mix of evergreens, flowering shrubs, perennials, you know. What is the material of the back access decks, staircases? What are those?
Those would be pressure treated.
Okay, unpainted?
They may be painted to fit in with the colors that we would be using on the exterior of the building as far as the vinyl goes,
Okay,
or white.
okay. Perhaps some larger evergreens such as like thuya or arborvitae might offer some landscape screening.
That would not be an issue.
I'm gonna let the other commissioners talk.
John?
Yeah, again, echoing Tom's comments, like, working within the confines of the building, and I actually pulled up the Google Maps like I always often like to do during these meetings so I could get a context of the current structure. Again, I do see there's 6 windows currently along, if that's the existing part, in between those. And we're keeping 2 windows, another window, and then creating doors out of 2 of them?
Yes,
Okay, so one will be blocked off.
yes.
Again, unless I'm looking at the drawing incorrectly, the porch is going to have 6 supports, but it looks like one's almost hanging in the air.
Sorry, the porch has got,
The porch, the supports for the porch, are there 6 or 5, and one was?
6. One is off-center for some reason, and it shouldn't be.
Okay, yeah, it just comes up
It shouldn't be.
into space there. What's the treatment going to be on those? Again, I understand the porch has to be supported.
Those would be obviously pressure treated,
Okay,
designed in such a way to support the porch, and they will be painted.
is there any way to, again, from my personal opinion, they don't really do anything for me. I understand the purpose of them, and I'm just trying to put into context what's the front of this building, what's the back of the building. And I guess from my standpoint, this looks like a better front to me, at least the top elevation, like, because that's the most common access, I think, into that property, especially looking here at the street view, right? Because nothing else is going to be placed
right.
in front of it. So I guess my recommendation would be to somehow screen that lower area to cover those, like put, I don't know, if trellis or some other treatment underneath the porch so you don't see the supports. I think it would be a little bit more cohesive for that side of the structure, a little bit more welcoming than just these 6
Well, we can do it.
4x4s going up to support a porch, which,
Yeah, we can do it in trellis, in, interspacing with some fairly large shrubbery.
yeah, I would be interested
to
what the
break
other
it up.
commissioners think. I just think they're so, I mean, the porch looks pretty sizable. The building's sizable
It
as it
is.
is now. You're taking over at least half of it with this porch structure.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. That's something we can do.
I think something just to visually screen that, it would make the steps stand out,
Mm-hmm.
a nice welcoming entrance. Again, I'll be interested if the commissioners have any other comment relative to that.
That would not be an issue.
All right, the treatment of the garage doors, I mean, is that going to match the garage doors on the other structures? The other 10 homes? I mean, again, we were trying to bring this all together somehow.
Most likely, there will be a difference in treatment on the single-family homes.
Okay.
Although it is one development,
Yep.
we think that those 10 houses should stand out a little bit different treatment on the outside.
Okay.
Because it's going to be, look like, obviously it's going to be a little community of houses there, along with this as a separate entity, although it's one project.
Sure. Now, you said the current site, it is current siding. It looks like it's concrete block here, at least from the picture.
It is not concrete block.
It's not. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Definitely the street view looks like the
Oh,
church
no, you're
is
talking about what
The
is
existing
currently-
church.
What is currently there?
That's what Tom's
Oh, I'm
question, I
sorry.
believe,
It is-
was.
It's not going to be left that way. That will be sided along with the rest. Is that what you're talking about? So the entire thing will be one church? Yes.
Which it is not depicted on the plans we have.
Well, that's what it's going to be.
Okay, yeah, it shows the existing, it basically looks like concrete block with two,
No.
is yours show concrete block? Looks like yours might even be slightly different than ours. I can't see from here, but the top elevation, or the bottom, both.
You're talking about this in here?
Yep,
This, that's what's currently there.
it's current block,
That's
yep,
going to be covered.
okay. So that's not depicted on our plans. Okay, that clears that up. I thought that's what you were asking, Tom, and I'm glad we got an answer.
Is that what you were asking?
Do that?
Yeah? Okay, that will be covered.
Okay, yeah, that's better. And then the roof for the porch, back to the porch quickly, is going to cover only the deck section? Because again, it looks like maybe the porch used to be longer in one set of plans. That's why that footing doesn't line up. But the roof structure is also extended beyond the porch. So I guess my recommendation would be whatever size the porch ends up, let's make sure that
You want the
the
roof?
support piers and the roof align with the porch, because again, they're not depicted as such on the drawing.
Okay, we can do that.
I'll leave some comments for Jamie. Relative to the site plan, though, I appreciate the consideration for the walkway. I guess I'm not following on the site plan how exactly that access is going to take place. Because there's only, so, first of all, I guess there's three, we'll get to that. I apologize, I'm going
That's
a
all right.
roundabout way. There's 3 livable units, but only 2 garages, correct?
Well, there are 1, 2, 3, 4.
Garages?
Yeah,
Okay, so those are each individual garages?
yes.
Okay, it looked like it was just one
No.
larger panel-sized door.
No.
So 4 garages for 3 residences.
Yes,
There are 4 ancillary parking spots in the plan, correct? On, adjacent to that.
Correct. That
Unit?
parking area has 4 spots.
Some of those are, I presume, used for the now converted rectory? Is that correct? Or will be? That was one thing, unfortunately you weren't here last time. One of our concerns that we brought up was the rectory's kind of standing alone, no vehicular access, no pedestrian access. Currently, it's through the church parking lot, and it appears it's also going to remain that way.
No, the rectory has a driveway access from the new road, the new access road.
Is that depicted on the plan that we were provided?
Yes.
yes.
Is that on 5.0?
It's on all of them, but yes, if you open if you're looking at the landscape plan, you can see it. So if
Do you guys see that?
if you're in the turnaround, right, and you look at 11 o'clock,
Okay, yep, I see
and
it
so
now.
there is an access now that goes straight into where that driveway already was, right? So what we've done is we've given that building its own driveway, which presumably it has its own garage.
I just don't see it defined. There's dash lines which appear to be
So,
revised
are you familiar
contour?
with the site?
Yeah, I'm looking at
So the site
sheet
has
5.0.
had an existing large parking lot on it, right?
Yep.
So what you're seeing there is if you look at about 11 o'clock, you can see a solid line that comes off of a curve.
Yeah, near the 101.5.
Right.
Yeah.
And it goes and it meets that dashed line.
What does that dash line
That
represent?
dashed line is the existing parking lot.
Okay.
So yes.
Yeah, I didn't see it defined as, typically, you know what I mean? You dull out the existing features or keep them dashed, and then you solid line. That's why I guess I was confused. I got it now. Okay. That was something we definitely wanted to see because, again, that's a completely separate, to your point earlier.
That was a specific
Each of these
request
things
by
is-
you last time.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And then, as you said, you weren't responsible for the lighting, and I think to Jamie's points, not all the revisions, but we'll get
Well,
into
the
that.
question of which lights to use was the specific question, not the lighting plans wouldn't change regardless of that, but the question of the overhang.
No,
versus the
we had
posts.
asked, we'll get into it when we get into the other 10 buildings, but we felt it was inappropriate. There were lights overhanging each driveway, so there was discussion about
Okay.
that. We'll get into that. Let's keep it to the church. But there is the church property and the rectory, which are both existing. I have no more questions.
Okay, thanks, John. Okay, a couple other things, and, you know, the scale, it's hard to gauge, 3/16 scale, my brain thinks well in quarter scale, so, you know, even the porch columns look like they're like, I thought at first they were like little 2.5-inch diameter steel pipe columns or something. I mean, I think the detailing of that porch, and I understand it's there, but then you talked about refurbishing. So I think the whole aesthetic of that porch, which includes how the posts reach the ground, it includes the posts that look so little spindly tiny going up to support the.
It's not there.
Right. All right. So. Right. So okay. All right, so either way, whether it's there or not, I think there's a lot to be done there with that to make that porch look nice. And I understand there's probably some graphic issues about columns that are offset and roofs that keep going. I can assume that that's an easy one to kind of fix, but just the size of the porch posts and everything else, I think needs to be addressed and looked at. So that's number one. Number two, the garages. So I guess you're matching the top of foundation of what's there, correct?
That's correct.
So which leaves you with a huge amount of foundation exposed, and I'm wondering if this might look a little better even if you left what's existing alone. Why do you need to Why do you want to pour the foundation walls 5 or 6 feet out of the ground, or however? It's again hard to get scale when you don't need to, and you could just stop the foundation walls lower, let the siding run down, ground this building a little bit more, rather than having all the foundation. So that's one comment on it. And then you're also, I guess, there is no jog to this building at all, right? So you're taking existing foundation, and is that block or poured concrete, the existing?
The old foundation is block.
Is block, and you're going to do a new poured foundation.
That's correct.
And so, you're going to have a line, there's a joint there, and
So you're, I'm sorry. So
I'm suggesting that, would you consider, like, maybe the garage building, it steps out. You're going to have a change, and let that, at that inside corner, let the change happen between the block and the poured wall, and maybe let that be a point where the foundation doesn't need to come up that high.
Well, what we can do, Mr. Chairman, is we can do this. We can pour a knee wall for the foundation. I know you know what I'm talking about, which lowers the concrete level, and do a knee wall with wood. Therefore, it's not going to look as massive as it looks now. I could do that.
Okay, fair. And so you're not wanting to do. I obviously can't force you to do the jog. I'm just wondering if that could help, because then also I could, look, Tom said. I mean, it's hard to love the looks of this building. But if you chose to let the garages, instead of being 30 feet, were a couple feet jogged on each side, I mean, I could make a case that this building would look, and then let the siding come down, that the direction of the ridge changes. Because right now, you have the building would be long, and naturally the ridge would, go front to back. And that just might give a little visual interest to this building.
Give me a second. Do we have enough room to jog the front of the garage portion out or back?
Well, back certainly wouldn't be a problem, right? You're literally just pulling back.
So we
and-
could pull it back maybe 3 or 4 feet? Pulling it back 3 or 4 feet, would that
Is that what you
satisfy
mean?
you?
Well,
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but I'm thinking like, 18 inches or 2 feet each side, and let that, and, I think that, that would allow the change of material to happen in the inside corner. That would allow you to drop the foundation and not be trying to align a block with a pour. It would, in my mind's eye, it would allow maybe, because that building's now, it's already longer, it's 30 by 24, and so you have the ridge running, parallel with the 24-foot dimension. Now it's going to be, say you went 2 feet in both directions, it'd be 24 by 34. Naturally, if you have a building of that shape, which way does the ridge typically run? It would run the 34-foot length. And that, look, I'm just trying to come up with some way to kind of give a little character to the building. And so just kind of addressing that in those ways, might achieve an aesthetic which I think would look nice. Of the new. Yep, and then if they jog forward, because right now, all this is in one plane. So if the new part, you jog forward, whatever, let's say 2 feet on both sides, your units get a little bigger. I understand there's a cost associated with this. You run the ridge the other way. I think it might look better. That would be my opinion. So,
We can take a look at
and
that.
are the floor heights, and I'm sure they are, I guess the ceiling heights in the 2 addition garages are different than the existing, because I noticed the windows are at different heights. And I assume that's because the floor of units 1 and 3 are different than in the floors of unit 2
That's true.
in storage.
That's true.
And that unit is storage
You
because...
can see the difference in the roof lines
the-
here. This is what you're talking about.
Well, I'm talking about the head heights of the windows.
Here.
I mean, it could be different roof pitches. I don't even know what the roof of the existing does. I'm assuming it matches that.
Well, it doesn't.
So,
This is higher.
no, but the pitch.
Oh, the pitch matches, yes, the
pitch
pitch matches the
Right.
existing.
So really what you have a higher plate height. It's the height of the cornice, which I understand. So, you want a little higher ceiling in the garages, therefore you have a little higher ceiling, the floor height's higher, and therefore, you're not aligning your fascias, right? Your fascia of your existing is at one height, and then several feet higher than that is your cornice of the new work. So that roof was going to be higher, but it's also what made me realize it was the window head heights. That's what made me realize that. So anyway, so I think it just might be a more attractive building if you consider doing something like that.
Okay.
The garage doors, just so we're clear, I mean, what's shown in plan and in elevation are, what would I be guessing, are 2 16-foot wide garage doors, not individual garage doors.
Oh, they're individual garage doors.
So, but you're saying there's 4 doors there?
Yes.
Okay, because
Yeah, here.
they're
There's
literally touching each other in the middle, and in the plan, it shows it as one big opening.
No, there are 2 garage doors on either end.
So you have 4 garage doors, even though there's 3 units, or is,
We have 4 garage doors, there are 4 garages.
and 3 units?
That's right.
Okay.
We need that for parking, additional parking.
Understood.
Yeah.
No, it's just graphically not shown that way on your drawings, that's all.
Okay.
Garage doors, exposed foundation, floor heights, turn the gable, address the porches, okay. So that's my commentary on
Okay.
the building itself. All right, so are there any other comments on the church building? So we can, I guess, we can go on and look quickly at the
No,
site
I just
plan?
comment on your comment. I really like the idea of, especially because they're being defined units. If you
Yeah,
change
stepping it.
those roof pitches on the 2 end units, I think that's what I was kind of looking at before, and certainly if it was different type material, that would make it stand out even more if it was still going to be block. But now that it's not going to be block, which I prefer, it's going to be one uniform type of siding. I think making that switch to the roof
Wait a minute,
pitches.
are you saying you prefer block?
No.
don't.
I prefer the siding look. What I'm simply saying is, since it all is going to be one cohesive
Right.
material, changing the roof pitches, to the commissioner's point, adds a bit of visual character to the, like I said, when you look at Google Street View, you're rounding the corner and whammo, you already see this big concrete block structure. Certainly adding the porches, adding the porch detail is going to help, but I think certainly changing the roof pitch.
Agreed. You know, I'm sorry, I had one other comment. Let me just jump back, Mr. Owen. And that's, even in the existing building, you probably don't have the ability, but, again, all that exposed foundation, I don't love that, and I know we could address it with landscaping, but do you have the ability to just put furring strips and let the siding run, even if it steps out, to carry that siding, even the existing parts, to not, I'm sure you wouldn't typically, right, pour a foundation 6 feet out of the ground?
You're talking about siding of some type?
Yeah.
Same type of siding over the
Potentially.
existing part of the foundation?
You'd have to see,
That-
part of me says it might be okay just to do the new parts and let that come down to a different height, but even in the existing parts, there's nothing really stopping you from just putting furring strips and sheathing and running the siding down. It might not be quite in the same plane as the siding above, because you're gonna have to fur it out, but it may be more complicated than you want to get into. And I understand that, but I think I'm just pointing out that you have options perhaps to deal with all that exposed foundation and all that exposed block.
I would rather do it in landscaping and lattice.
Okay, I understand, and I would hope you consider on the new parts, leaving it down low.
We could do
because
that on the new parts.
Okay. All right, so that being said now, do we want to just go back? John, would you like to look at the site plan and about the comments that were and either were or were not addressed?
Yeah, I think if we, at least my opinion, and
Sure.
I'm not interested in
you
what
know, I
Tom
think-
hears, just go one by one, and okay, was this made, was it not made on the plans? Because I think my presumption was what we're seeing tonight is gonna be the same material, again, absent any changes that we're recommending, that's gonna go before zoning. Zoning, correct, Susmitha?
All right.
This is
So I
going-
think-
This is going before zoning on the 22nd.
Yes, yeah. So my point being, any changes that aren't made should certainly be reflected in our comments so they could be considered by the zoning commission. In addition to what we've already pointed out about the church. So if someone wants
Okay.
to read those.
So I'll
have them.
read. So we're going to go by the list off our minutes. So consider adding street trees in a formal rhythm along the new proposed street.
Tom, where are you reading from?
I'm reading from our meeting minutes,
Page 2?
page 2, yes.
Okay.
So comment number 1 about adding street trees, and I think I heard, well, go ahead.
Yes, we did add street trees.
Okay. Remove or modify note number 3 about,
Since you don't have a complete drawing set with both the changes to the residential and the church building incorporated, I suggest you send these comments as is, along with any new comments to church building, and they will modify the entire plan set. Even if they have incorporated already, they would incorporate new information and then give it to zoning commission. Zoning would also cross-reference and see if this was addressed or not addressed.
I
before
think
they
my
render a
concern,
decision.
Susmitha, is some of the stuff, this is just a thought, some of the stuff may be changed, but it still may not represent what we are looking for. So if we're looking at it, as Jamie pointed out, anything that they were willing to change, we're at least getting to look at it again and say, no, that's really not what we were thinking. We were thinking of this. Because again, this plan set, as depicted, is what's going to go before zoning, and there have been changes. So if they've changed and didn't change to address our concern, I think we would be
fair enough. I
remiss.
think we can quickly run
Yeah.
through this and just identify, I don't think this will take long. So they dealt with note number 3, add sidewalks to tie new development with existing neighborhood.
Yes.
I think that was done to everyone's satisfaction, I
Yep.
guess. Vinyl siding for the single-family home is not ideal. Stone vinyl should be avoided. I think we can, that's going to stay in there, and it's going to be our recommendation, but I understand that a single-family dwelling, you're probably going to see vinyl siding. Stonework, attractive lighting, and enhanced planning should be considered to create neighborhood charm.
We agreed to that.
Right. And,
However, the revisions aren't reflected.
well, maybe some enhanced plantings, but
Yeah,
there's
but
nothing really.
Relative to the lighting plan, the site designer had even said that that hadn't been amended.
Right, that note in particular is primarily from the architect's perspective, not the site design perspective.
Okay, so that.
So that
the note's
should,
gonna
that note
stay.
should remain.
All these notes, I Mrs. Smith, I always thought these would still just get passed on. So all these notes will stay, even though some of them,
But can our meeting minutes for this meeting reflect that these are being read into tonight's record, and where we feel that they've provided us with enough information, we at least ourselves are checking the box for the zoning? Don't worry about that, we looked at it. That's my... Okay.
you know,
I don't mind repeating
Okay.
the whole thing for zoning again.
Oh, sure, but they won't know where
All right, so would you,
where we've gotten enough information and now say, okay, well, although it was in this meeting minute, it's not an issue anymore. That's,
You could state, I'm sorry, one second. You could state in your letter that you took 2 meetings to review this, and the first set of comments were based on what you had seen initially, and the second time around, you had seen some changes or improvements to the drawings, but you did not see a consolidated set. Therefore, you're reiterating all your comments, assuming that the applicant would bring full designs to zoning commission addressing all of these comments.
okay.
all right, so it doesn't mean still we can't just run
Sure.
through this and see what got addressed
That's
or
good.
not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
any utilities, drainage structures, and rip-up areas must be screened to maintain neighborhood context. I mean, I probably don't see that on a plan. or maybe
I
do.
added a note to the landscape notes to address that.
Okay,
Just specifically, note number 8 says, above-ground utility structures to be screened by plantings.
okay. Sidewalks shall be provided to connect the rectory building with the parking area.
That is done.
Lampposts hanging over driveways should be reconsidered. Simple residential lampposts would be more appropriate. So that was not addressed, and maybe that's, to John's point, maybe that's the one that wasn't communicated properly by us perhaps, but it appears like you're showing, like gooseneck, some kind of light over each one of the driveways, as opposed to, your typical kind of residential style lamppost. It looked like something you would see on the street, as opposed to something over someone's driveway.
Right, and again, the choice of lamppost is relative to the desire for the aesthetic of the development, right? So that's their end.
Okay.
Now, also, in addition, you have to understand the way CAD works sometimes, and like you have a symbol for a light pole, and that's the one that comes through when you do the lighting program. Like there's a program to develop the lighting plan, and that's the symbol because that's the light that's on the streets, right? So,
Well,
I'm not saying one way or the other whether or not that is a thing that's going to stay that way, but that's, the question of whether or not you can see is is site design. The question of what that light post looks like is their design.
Okay, so fair enough, and I think that the note is gonna stay, and I'm gonna guess when Mr. Owen gets to building this, I'm guessing he's not gonna put like what you'd see as street light, hanging over street light on each of the driveways.
You won't see that.
You're gonna pick a residential
Right.
style lamp post so it's fine, the note will stay,
Yes.
and you hopefully, I guess, I'm assuming that when you go in front of zoning, maybe you'll have picked something out and show them, okay, this is, not that it can't change again, but something that is more residential in style. I think that's what we are looking for. Okay. Any other commentary on the site plan? We're not gonna comment further as we discussed on the,
You didn't finish the list, just to let you
oh,
know.
I'm sorry, did I miss the second page? I'm sorry. Enhance visual balance on front facades of homes by recentering bays, adjusting windows, cleaning up porch details, and adjusting the scale of the shutters on mulled windows. That has not been done, correct?
well, you don't see it on the plan, but we agreed to do that. You can make that a stipulation. We agreed to that.
Okay. add driveway for the proposed rectory building from the new proposed street to keep parking off Silver Lane.
We did that.
Modifications to the church project must be presented at the next meeting as a separate application. And that's what we've been talking about tonight,
Right.
so.
Do you want to ask the applicant if they're going to submit revised drawings based on the feedback they received today? Or if they're just going to take the same submission to the zoning commission and say that they would agree to these comments? Because in that case, it'll be left to the discretion of the zoning enforcement officer to actually review this and, bring it to compliance.
Okay.
I don't think, Smitha, not to disagree with you, but I'm going to disagree with you. What will happen if we are not able to complete on the drawings, based on that meeting being held on the 22nd, they will absolutely read your comments into the records, and the ones that they feel are appropriate, and the ones that we've agreed to with this board, they will make that as part of the stipulations. We will have to do that.
Okay, I understand, but I
Which
think-
is typical, I think, of the way.
That's the way they work.
Which is typical of the way our recommendations are taken. I don't know that the developers go in and change every
Yeah.
little detail.
guess-
While that would be nice, I understand
Yeah.
where the applicant's coming from.
So do I. And I would say respectfully, Mr. Owen, to you, is that in this case, considering that you came back here, if you're planning on making the changes, that's why I was a little surprised, could have been miscommunication, that you didn't just have that for tonight. And so, same thing, now you have another meeting. If you're going to make the changes, make the changes, and so they're not, look, I do this for a living, and so these are not huge, extensive things for you to do. And so let's be upfront and fair and show everyone what it is you're planning on doing and how you're going to make this thing look great. If that's your intent, at some point you're going to have to update that to show that anyway. And I think this is Smitha's original point, was that you're kind of, it's read into the record, and then it's up to the zoning enforcement officer, whoever's going to issue a zoning permit, to say, oh, well, they kind of changed things, but is that really okay? Is that really, and so that's why it would have been beneficial tonight. We would have said, oh, yeah, great, that looks great. And we could have, made those comments as an architectural review board, going on to another commission that's not looking at things from a design perspective. And I'm not saying they can't, but they would be looking to us. And in this case, considering you're here twice, it would have been good.
If I may comment, I came back a second time to assure you guys, and we've made some substantial changes to the plans, that we are obviously willing to work with you. And we've agreed tonight to do just about everything that you have asked. Now, if we can get another full set of drawings in front of the zoning commission on the 22nd, showing everything on the plan that you would want us to show, we're going to do that. To the extent that we can't get it done in time and have a postponement yet again of the 22nd of August meeting to September, would force us into a situation where we have to file a new application, new fees, at great expense to do it. So, to the extent that we've shown the changes we have on the plans, obviously we'll do them. To the extent that you have made recommendations, and I have sat here tonight and agreed to them, we will have to do them, because you will make it part of the record. No one's looking to be cute, and I'm not trying to be abrasive, and so Smitha knows what she's talking about. There's no question about that, and so do you fine people. But I am here in good faith, and we will make those changes. And not only in good faith will we make them, the commission will require us, before we get a building permit and sign off on this, to make sure those changes have been made consistent with the approval of this development. We have no choice.
Okay, fair.
It's not a zoning enforcement issue. It's an issue of approval from the zoning commission. You have to meet that approval letter.
So, if I may add, it's not, my problem is that the point on enhancing visual balance on front facades by recentering bays, adjusting windows, cleaning up porch details, adjusting the scale of shutters on mulled windows. The zoning enforcement officer's job is zoning. It's more related to land use. He could look at a site plan and say, did he add street trees? Did he put, avoid stone vinyl? Or did he put, screen the drainage structures? Or sidewalks provided? Those are some things that are easily enforceable when you look at these conditions. But when we come to a condition like this that you have here, enhance visual balance, recenter base, clean up porch details, we don't know what you mean. It's just too, abstract for a zoning enforcement officer to try to figure out how to do this. So maybe you have to rewrite this condition in a way that, even if zoning commission provides this as a condition in their approval, a zoning enforcement officer can pick it up, review the revised drawings and say, hey, they've done this, so they're okay to be signed off.
I mean, I understand what you're saying. I don't know how we write that in such a way. So you want us to somehow write something that the zoning enforcement officer then can just look at it and say, oh yeah, they did it. But we're not redesigning this specifically, or we're getting some general commentary. If we're going to put tracing paper over this, I'll sketch around it and we'll, but I'm not sure that that's what we're. So I'd be happy to think about wording, but how do you do that, Tom? You know what I mean?
Totally get what Susmitha is saying. We work in this every day. It's, our world. Once it leaves our world, people don't necessarily understand it. Perhaps we do say, center the bay on the garage door below. Center the third-story window on that bay. Remove decorative columns in favor of simple columns with simple square railing.
But I get it, but how, even the porch on that rectory building, what do we say, it's as drawn, it's not an attractive feature,
That's
right?
correct.
So, and we're talking about maybe, some other things that, they can choose to do or not do, I guess, but so I just, it's like you mentioned before, it's the same with every other application, really. We make recommendations. Some of them are general enough to say it's like check the box. Some of them are, a little more design focused and therefore not quite so tangible. And,
Right.
this is unique only because Mr. Owen has been here twice for the same project. And we appreciate that, don't get me wrong. And we appreciate the fact that you've, made changes to, to address our concerns. So I just,
I think we make a wish list, say what's the most important things to us to see. We're not going to get all of our recommendations in here. Like you said, we're not going to redesign this project, so we'll pick a few, be very specific about it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not certain that this is first time, second time review. I don't see this as any different than what we'd normally do. I mean, we've looked at some really large residential apartment complexes and had what I would say less than specific requests. And again, it's the best that we can do, to your point, other than sitting with tracing paper. So we have to convey or articulate clearly enough what we're looking for and just be comfortable with that. Like I said, this isn't our first rodeo. We've done this many times. Again, once we put it in paper, it becomes part of the record, and then it's up to the zoning commission. So as long as we feel we're clear enough, which I think last time, I understand where you're coming from, Susmitha, but we've never really, this project to me is no different than anything else that we've ever looked at. And if we had those concerns tonight, I don't think at least I haven't had them in the past. We've been clear enough. We've voted on it as a commission and let it go. So that would be my recommendation.
I don't disagree with you, and I think that, granted our comments, if we're talking about the front of the residential single family, I mean, we made some, but there's a bunch of different ways to do this, and I'm just kind of going back and forth between the plans, and, would it be nice if everything is centered? Yes, but maybe some things that might keep that from happening, and then, oh, but there's another way to do it that'll be nicer than what's shown, you know, and like, I frankly think the proportions of the roof over the porch is what bothers me the most, the steep roof and the teeny little window up above it, you know, and so I think that whole thing needs to be looked at as, at the very least, the front of each of these buildings as you know, a little architectural piece, and
Perhaps that's our recommendation. We focus on these porches a little bit more. Simplify roof lines, clean up columns so they're not quite as decorative, you know, square off railings. Because you're right, if we get around to messing with window alignments, you know.
it might work and it
it's
might
art.
not.
It's art. You know, there's a million different ways to do it. If that's the part that bothers you the most, then I think we should focus, you know, our more stringent recommendations.
Well, I'm probably, I mean, if I understood you properly, John, our comment about enhance the visual balance of front facades, blah, 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 you're okay passing this along with
No,
that
I
comment?
would-
And maybe I think I'm leaning towards, I think I am too, only you know, they're all important, you know, and it's
But if there's some easier pieces, to Tom's point, if the concern's like the porch, okay, Tom just detailed a few things that he would change with the porch. That certainly, regardless of any other changes, we would still want to see those made. So I think if that's the case, if we can detail some of those changes with an overall comment, I think it would more clearly convey what we're looking for. Because then you've at least pointed out a couple features that you felt were dominant to change
you
the
wanna be
visual
more
aesthetic.
this comment you'd like to see be a
Well,
little
if
more
Tom feels he
specific.
can articulate a couple things,
I feel like there's not much we can do with the facade here. We can offer recommendations for quote-unquote the least successful part, which is the entrance porch. And we can offer some very specific guidelines there to put forward as suggestions. That's my comment.
yeah, I would feel comfortable with that.
I think the other general recommendation should still carry. If they get to it, that would be awesome. But in terms of, you know, requiring specificity, it should be focused.
Okay. All right, so now we get to the difficult part, which is always coming up with what our recommendations are here. I think we're going to, as Smita said, we're going to carry the list that was in our meeting minutes forward, and we can amend those slightly or be more specific in the areas around the front of the facades of the single-family homes. But let's start with commentary about the church building. Tom, you've been maybe taking, so you want to give us a first shot at some notes?
I know he does.
Windows on new addition shall align with garage overhead doors below.
Agreed.
Landscape screening will be necessary to obscure building from the street and the parking lot view. Maximum plantings recommended with a mix of evergreen shrubs, flowering shrubs, perennials, and flowers.
Agreed.
Large evergreens are needed to screen rear exterior stairs from the street view.
Agreed.
Siding and materials shall coordinate with proposed 10 residence development.
Say that again, please.
Siding and materials shall coordinate with proposed 10 residence development.
Agreed.
Siding and roofing shall be continuous across the entire project, existing and proposed.
Agreed.
Porch structure must align with roof above. Columns above shall continue down to grade.
Agreed.
Additional details should be focused on the porch, such as fascia, column sizing, railings, etc.
Agreed.
Consider bringing garage addition foundation down several feet to reduce mass of new additions.
Agreed.
Consider jogging additions 1.5 to 2 feet in either direction so there's not facade alignments, and allow the new parts to have their own identity.
All right, can I stop you right there for a second?
Sure.
If we can do that, we will. it looks like we can, but I'm not sure yet until we sit and, can we do that?
If I may, just be aware that by adding area to the roofs and the buildings, if we're talking about bumping out, may require some review of the drainage calculations and things like that, right? Because we are moving stormwater based upon the amount of coverage. And so increasing the building size or increasing the roof line will require a little bit of engineering. I just
Well,
want to make that clear.
We wouldn't be increasing the building size, we would be moving what we have shown back or forward a couple of feet. And that's gonna change the drainage?
Is that what we were talking about, or are we talking about?
Is that,
I think we're suggesting it is getting bigger. They would go 2 feet in both directions. So it would
then I
be
Not just moving.
not just moving.
see, I misunderstood that. I thought you were looking for a visual. So if we move what we have there back 2 feet, it gives us a differential.
No, because
You're
you want-
talking about making them bigger?
Correct.
That could be a problem.
I mean,
On the two ends.
on the two ends.
Garage side, yeah.
Look, I understand, and maybe, I don't even know if all your drainage work and calculations are already done. You're right, you're gonna end up with,
Yeah, they
you know,
will.
X number of square feet of additional, you know, if I know.
Right, those
civil eng-
calculations are done. I can't tell you whether the 400 extra square feet or whatever it is
Yeah.
off the top of my head is, I don't know how close our margins are on the requirements, right? So I can't tell you right here now whether that is gonna be okay without
Understood.
some redesign.
Understood.
Is there,
And it
And I'm
doesn't
not-
have to be 2 feet neither, you know, it could be 18 inches, you know, so it's down to that. I mean, my experience has been, and I understand you're not gonna be able to tell me right off the bat, but my experience has been is that those infiltrators, whatever you're using, are, you know, are size, and there's, oftentimes, you're not right to the limit of those. That's been my experience, at least, anyway, so I guess you don't really know that.
Well, but it is math, right? So it has to be
Yep.
checked no matter what,
Yes.
right?
Correct, understood.
Tom, may I, Mr. Chairman? May I make a suggestion, Tom? And you can certainly tell me no. There are ways that you word things which give us leeway. And I'm not sure, maybe something to the effect, and I'm not telling you what to write down, but it's somewhere it would be more desirable. Am I saying it right?
If I could jump in there, I think my proposed revision to that would be definitely concentrate on the change in the roof pitches that we talked about. That's a number one, but in addition, right, Jamie, if they could be completed, the 1.5, 18 inches each side bump out.
I agree. I think this building would look better, even if it was all on the same plane, if we turn the ridge. So, and then if you can jog that out on both sides and, you know, not go crazy on your, you know, your storm drainage, that would be great. Even if you just jogged out one side, pick the side you think is, I have to look. You know, if you jogged out one side and not the other or something, you know, because your cornices don't align. So even if it doesn't jog, you're still gonna get, you know, a change, you know, because you know, you're not just carrying that same horizontal fascia straight across. So,
Nick is correct in saying that if we just shift things in order to break that visual and cause that roof line change, if we just do that, move that one garage 2 feet forward or back, that doesn't change any of that stuff. You know, as long as the footprint and the roof is the same,
Then we're okay.
I don't have anything I have to worry about, right?
See, if we pull the front out 2 feet, it's gonna be a 2-foot shift forward in the back. So there's gonna be a change in the front and the back without increasing the size or decreasing the size.
Yeah, but that offset to me would not look appropriate, because then there's gonna be an 18-inch offset of the building in, and then you're just gonna see this tiny little
well,
piece of wall.
yeah, the only thing that saves it is that the cornices don't align. But typically, if you have a gable, that's gonna project out past the perpendicular cornice. That's why it'd be ideal if they jog forward, or at least were in the same plane.
Okay.
So, I would almost, well, I think changing the roof line and changing the direction of the ridge would help right off the bat. and you'll deal with that. You'll have a little bit of high gable end there, maybe there's another little window there, you know, there's things you can do there. So,
Then I'll write it as consider extending additions 1.5 to 2 feet in both directions.
If you could do that, that would be great.
but how about the ridge line?
Yep, I'm
Okay.
also consider changing roof ridge to add visual interest.
Okay.
Does that provide enough specificity, though? Consider changing roof ridge, I mean,
Consider
Direction of ridge, if that's.
Yeah.
changing direction. Consider changing direction of roof ridge to add visual interest of garage additions. And then our final note on the church property, bring proposed siding down several feet of existing portion to obscure mass of foundation. Trellis and landscaping also an option.
That's fine.
Even on the existing building
Yeah,
we're talking about.
that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. That's my notes for the church property.
Okay, so we have all the notes are going to carry forward. You know, now I think maybe the last thing, I'm remembering this right, that we need to talk about, are we going to be any more, and it's really just this one note about the front of the single family. Do we want to be any more specific in what we're looking for here? And I don't know, just, I'll go with what, if you guys think that we should, that's fine with me. I just think that there's just so many ways. I would hate to say, oh, you have to center the bay, you know, because I'm not sure what else that's going to affect. I mean, the porch is a problem. I think the little funky windows are a problem. The shutters being too small, I think.
well, I think some of that was articulated
Yeah.
clearly enough, that shutter sizing and massing of the shutters to the windows.
Well, it just says adjusting the scale of the shutters. It's
Yeah.
not that specific, but,
And that's not an issue at all.
yeah. No, I'm sure it's not. I think, I'm thinking of the guy, I mean, you're gonna get through your commission, and then, to Smita's point, you're gonna have a guy who's, or a woman who's giving you a zoning permit, and they're the ones who are gonna have to say, did they meet these things or not? And adjusting the scale of the shutters, what, he may or may not even know what that means, or what should happen. You know, is it half the size of the window? So, that's the hard part.
Maybe we just focus on the porch then, or something.
Well, I don't want to leave, you know, but I don't want to leave this other stuff. I don't want to take these things out.
Oh, no, I am
Okay.
fully on board with carrying our previous comments.
So if you want to be more specific about the porch, you said about the porch columns, reduction of the porch.
Right,
Roof,
I would say simplify entrance porch roof line to be a single gable.
Or a single shed. I mean, and I think when they go to
Single shed.
character, if they have 10 buildings here. I mean, you can have some that have gables and some that have sheds, and not a shed with a gable cut into it, and the pitch is steep and all those things. I think,
Keep in mind, guys, that these are single-family homes.
yeah,
That's what they are. So there's going to be a little bit of change in each one of them, so it doesn't look like a quote-unquote project.
right.
Maybe we don't offer more laser specificity, because to that point, we
right.
don't want, you know,
We don't want 10 of the same thing. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, then leave it the way it is.
is.
Leave it the way it is.
And I'm gonna drive by here in a year, and I'm gonna say to you, well, it looks like, it doesn't look good, but, okay, all right, so, as far as giving Liz something, this list carries forward in your list, and that becomes the recommendation, so you can get a copy of this. So it's this area, it's all those bullet points, and, you know, the ones that are, and maybe one more thing. What's that? So, the stonework, attractive lighting, enhanced plantings isn't represented in a drawing that we see in any way, nor is enhanced visual balance. I don't know I'm looking to you, Smita, do we want to say that those two, we see no evidence of
That was
there
my,
being any
that was
changes?
my point. I think we should outline where, again, whether there was miscommunication, however you outlined it earlier, Jamie, that we just didn't see it. We didn't have enough information to make further comment.
It's,
Period.
yes, it's that one and it's that one.
Which are,
Everything
can you,
else-
can you repeat
The
those for the
stonework,
record?
attractive lighting, and enhanced planning should be considered to create neighborhood charm. Okay, we haven't looked at lighting, we don't know what the stonework is. And then enhanced visual balance on front facades of homes by recentering bays, adjusting windows, cleaning up porch details, and adjusting the scale of shutters on mulled windows.
How about before that entire statement, the commission recommends, yada, yada, yada?
Yeah, that's typically, that's the
Well,
way
that's
it
how,
that what you do?
it is a summary recommendations. That's up in front of all of these. It's just those two that we might say that on the second meeting, the commission had nothing to review, but even all.
Those carry forth from our prior,
Following what we're trying to say here?
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
those recommendations from the first hearing based on this correspondence carry through.
Yeah, and with two of them, we have not, even in the second meeting, we did not
Right.
have anything to be able to review and confirm. Okay? All right, so, do we?
I will second that entire motion.
Second, you mean all the list?
Yes.
All right, then, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? All right, so that motion carries unanimously. Yep. With that whole list of recommendations. So we'll get that printed up. All right,
That's it?
Rowan,
Yes?
that's it.
Okay.
You're excused.
So we get a favorable recommendation based on what we just spoke about and what you voted on.
It is, we've struggled with what the actual verbiage will say, whether or not we really, since we don't really have power, and, it's sort of like, when we have a whole list of things, it's almost like, okay, it's fine, but here's our recommendations. That's how it will probably be worded. Okay.
Or
Passing
typically,
it through, we have no right to
consistency
hold
with
it up.
our regulations.
Yep.
And then we make these recommendations.
Okay.
That's,
Yeah,
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time this time. Until next time.
thank you, Mr. Owen.
thank you.
No.
Okay, second on the agenda, 225 Lordship Boulevard. Review of petition to the zoning commission by 225 Lordship Boulevard LLC to construct a set-aside development of a residential multifamily building with 127 dwelling units pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 80-30G.
Yeah.
What did I say? 8-30G?
80.
Oh, I'm sorry, 8-30G. I know what those are.
Chairman, members of the commission, Chris Russo with Russo and Rizzio LLC, offices at 10 Sasko Hill Road, Fairfield, Connecticut. Here on behalf of the applicant, here with Phil Fruchter, who with PAP Architects, who's worked on this project with us, for a property that at 225 Lordship Boulevard. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It's right next to the spray terminals. It has been before you before. Originally, this was the location of the old Lordship Hotel. It was subsequent, that existing building was subsequently approved for a conversion to a 69-unit apartment building. Later, it received another approval for a self-storage facility that is located behind what was that originally existing building. It was a 120,000 square foot self-storage facility. And then last year, early last year, it was approved, the front came to you. Do you have the approved one? Right here. So. Last year it was approved, it came through the ARB for this design, which was approved subsequently by P&Z, for a 5-story, 100-unit building that would be along the frontage along Lordship Boulevard. And so this project, again, came through ARB, came through P&Z, and was fully approved. Unfortunately, since that time, and really since the, really the beginning of the project, the economies have changed. And, obviously inflation and interest rates have impacted everybody. It has also impacted development. And in an 830G development where there's a percentage of the development, 30%, that is designated as affordable, particularly affected by that because 30% of the units are restricted in the amount that they may be rented for. Typically, that amount ends up that those units are a loss for the development. So it was the inflation, the raise in interest rates, particularly hampered this application, this development, I should say. So our client looked at the site, looked at this development, and to see if there was a way to move forward. And so now we're back to you with a change. It's the same design, really the exact same design. It's in the exact same location. There's no change to the landscaping plan to add an additional story and to go up a story. And Chair, is that so? That's all. That's.
Yeah, that was never reviewed and approved, a building that looks like that. Just
Well,
so
then
you're
we
clear.
came back and we were approved for a change to the design. There was a modernization to the design that was then approved, and we went through the process to get that approval.
So,
I don't have that in my file. All I have is this one. And this one was very well favored because of its beautiful design, and you had very minimal comments on this. And I think the ARB largely loved this design.
Well, so and then we went through a whole presentation. We went back and discussed when we got into the looking at this project and the clientele that it would serve. It's an area and a use that would attract a lot of younger clientele. And the feeling on that, what was that original design, was that it was something more geared towards an older community. And that this design, which was this is the approved plan, that this design was more in keeping with the area where it's industrial, and then also that that it would attract this younger clientele. It's a design that you've seen there that and I'm sure Phil will speak to this because he's done a lot of development in different areas. That this type of design is something that really works for the younger clientele, and so we went and received approvals for that design.
okay, so I don't see how that, if you totally change the outside of the building, I don't see how you got approved. You would have been required to come back here. It's a whole different project. Aesthetically, it's architectural review board. I don't see how you got anybody's approval for that design when we have never even seen it before. And look, we will, I guess, so to us, it's irrelevant if you say you got approval somewhere else. We're seeing it for the first time, and so we're going to, I guess, review this building on its own merits, but I can tell you we're going to compare it. We're not going to compare it to something that got approved not in front of this board. We're going to compare it to what we saw and liked and approved previously. And that's probably, I'm guessing, because that's where my head is going, that's probably what you're going to hear from us. And again, I'm surprised, I guess it would be putting it mildly, to say that somehow you got this approved at the zoning commission level, a totally different project without going to the ARB. I don't see how that's possible.
I'll have to go back to my correspondence with zoning in the process, in the review process that went through for it, but this, I can tell you this was the project that was approved. It originally was approved in the other form. Then when we went and looked back further, we brought the elevations to Jay Hibansky and submitted those to him for review to see what would be required for approval.
And Jay said, oh, that even though what we had reviewed was
I
this,
mean,
he said, oh, it's
Chair,
fine, go ahead.
when the architect comes in up to speak to his design and everything, I can use that time to go look at the correspondence I have, and I can absolutely submit it for the record.
Chairman, if I may speak. I just opened up the entire application on land use meetings info page for March 23rd, 2022, under zoning commission for 225 lotship. And I have a bunch of documents here, the A2 survey, affordability plan, CAM application, erosion sediment control, site plan review, text amendment, zone change deed, erosion control plan, landscape plan, lighting plan, site plans, floor plans, traffic evaluation report.
Right.
And what was submitted to the zoning commission was
Correct.
this one.
So then it was approved, and then we went back and revised the elevations, and that was approved. So that was not on that date.
Okay.
That this elevation was.
When was
this
it
elevation.
approved? In April?
I can get you the exact date. When our architect's up here speaking about it, I will look and I will get you the exact date that was approved.
So since this committee never had an opportunity to review this, I think the initial recommendation letter was for this design, and it doesn't hold good.
No.
So today, I think this committee has to review this like a new application with a new set of comments, because the one that we had on the file was basically for this drawing, and this committee
I mean, we
never-
could run through the materials, we'll run through the whole design of it, and Phil could certainly speak to that.
Okay,
And I will get the information about, when this was approved, the dates it was approved, and it was approved by P&Z.
Well, hold on, so I mean, I agree, we are going to review this in
Sure.
full, totally, but I am, some of the comments, because it's essentially the site plan and where this building sits remain the same, you just added another
Exact
story
same.
to it. Okay.
Correct.
So some of our comments from back then, again, this is a unique situation, because now you're, from a site plan standpoint, you're back in front of us a second time, and I kind of briefly went through this, and our recommendations from a site planning standpoint, I'm not sure I'm seeing any of those addressed. Again, we're going to do a whole new letter to this, but I'm not sure that any of this stuff was at all recognized in this revised, because again, the site plan didn't change. We're going to review that.
Right.
The site plan, as well as the aesthetics of this building. It will be an entire new recommendation letter, but it will also, I'm sure, kind of point to some of these items that we had put forth before that maybe you're going to show that I'm wrong. I'm not sure, and
Right.
but anyway.
Chairman, now that he said it, I see in October 2022, they went for a facade submission only, and they changed the facade to create a building that appeals to their target audience in their letter.
Correct.
And this is the design that they got approved, and I don't know, why it never came back to ARB. It should have. Oh, you don't see anything? Okay, maybe it just blanked out, but it was the same thing, the same color scheme in October, but it never came before ARB again.
Again, I have to look at the correspondence, but regardless, we can run. Phil's here, so he can run through it, and just so you know, the site plan and the landscaping plan is the same as was from. It actually increased from the original approval slightly, but it's so we're not changing the location of the building. We're not changing setbacks or anything like that. The only thing that's happening to the site, maybe I'll show that here, is the addition of this parking area to help to support what's the additional unit. So what this project now is proposing is an additional story than what was previously approved by the P&Z, and that additional story will add 27 units. So now it's instead of a 100-unit project, it would be 127 units. And that's the main change from the prior approval. And, you know, just about its height and what we're doing, the building behind it is also the same number of stories, so we're matching the number of stories of the building behind it. We think this is a good location for an 830G for an affordable housing development. I know if you pay attention to the news and you see a lot of 830G developments, a lot of times they're contentious. I've been involved in a number of them. I've certainly seen a lot of them. And typically, where you see the contention is when they get located in places, particularly residential neighborhoods, where they can have a stark difference from the buildings that are around it. So in residential neighborhoods where maybe there's a 1 or a 2 story, and then an 830G affordable housing development comes in and it's 3 or 4 stories and it's out of character. This location presents a unique opportunity to locate affordable housing units and construct a building of a height that matches the character of the building behind it and also the self-storage facility that have that height, and locate it there rather than you know, in a residential neighborhood. So I really think it's a great location for this type of development, to create these affordable units, plus the convenience that it has in just its location to I-95 and along the corridor that could support its traffic. So we think it's an appropriate location. We think the height is in conformity with the character of what's around it. I'll let Phil get into the details about the design, which I'm sure you're interested in, obviously. And I'll just hand out, just so you could see, this is a picture of what you can see here, which is the building that's been converted to the 69 apartment units, as well as the self-storage facility behind it. And you can see the area here in front, which is where this building would go. So with that, I'll turn it over to Phil to make his presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Architecture Review Board. I'm Philip Fruchter, a principal at PAP Architects PC, 188 East Post Road, White Plains, New York. I am not the architect of the original design that you showed earlier. So I'm sure everyone is familiar with the site. Lordship Boulevard is at the bottom of the page. I-95 is a little further off the bottom of the page. The fuel depot is on the right side of the page, and then this is the existing building that you just have the photograph of right now. The pink area is our proposed building, the footprint of which is almost identical to what you saw originally, a building that's elevated with parking underneath, and then a small lobby and commercial space on the first floor, entrances from the Lordship Boulevard side and the rear of the building at the center lobby. Since the original application that you saw, that you had the photo of, we have augmented the landscaping plan considerably with at every location where it's possible to put plant material, trees. We have a palette of deciduous and evergreen trees and shrubs, of working down to a lower height along Lordship Boulevard, but every opportunity that we had to put something, there is plant material. Additionally, there was a courtyard in this area that we turned into a landscape stroll garden, and we augmented the evergreen screen between the fuel depot and our development. So this is the proposed exterior. It consists of fluted metal siding, both in solid metal and perforated metal. The perforated metal is used to screen the garage level completely, and I have a sample of it. I'll show you in a minute. And it also is the railings for the balconies and the amenity deck on the top floor. We have at the base of the unit, base of the building, the first floor is 16-inch by 16-inch ground face architectural masonry units. This is the finish, but not the size, so they're bigger, 4 inches thick, 16-inch by 16-inch. The fluted siding, solid, is this, and then perforated where it is a railing or a garage screen. And then we have, you can see some yellow features, which are yellow spandrel glass, only at the first floor, set in slightly from the face of the building. Site lighting has not changed since the official approval, but it's slightly different than what you may have seen originally. It consists of a row of 15-foot luminaires behind the curb on Lordship Boulevard, similar lighting in the rear, and then some wall sconces in keeping with the character of the design on the sides. And on the roof level, not really visible from the street, we have some downlights mounted to the pergola structure, and then 2 light columns 10 feet high on the roof deck. Not terribly visible from the street, but they are there. I am happy to go into more detail about anything that you like or answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. John Zabel, would you like to? All right, Tom Jarkowitz, you have the floor.
Thank you for your presentation. It's not every presentation we get that we have an actual architect on the project, so we do appreciate that. Obviously, this is quite different than the last time we saw this project, so it was a bit of a shock to us. I will say it is nice that you are, incorporating an affordable element to this project, especially sited where it is. I think it makes sense. It's easy access to 95 and other commuter areaways. But I think what I want to talk about the most is the color choice. Can you speak on what informed these decisions?
Yes. As you know, this building is seen mostly from a distance from I-95. Lordship Boulevard is a road that's traveled at fairly high velocity. As Mr. Russo indicated, the developer is desirous of attracting a younger, more design aware clientele, and we developed this palette of colors against the charcoal gray to create an interesting presence on that street, especially against the fuel depot. The balcony colors on the rear of the building are not the red, pink color. They are gray as well. I have a sample here, only because there's a short distance between this building and the existing residential building in the rear, so we didn't want to introduce that level of vibrancy.
So the charcoal gray was chosen by the developer?
No, it was a communal
Okay.
decision that we suggested.
Okay. I guess I'm having difficulty with that color choice only because so much of this area is already paved. Nearly 100% of the site is parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's right next to a very well-traveled boulevard. I just think the gray on gray is a lot. It's a sea of gray. I'm not sure. I understand what you're saying about, making this building more of, more or less a billboard, making a landmark with these colors. And I get the gray, it's modern, it's, pretty. But it does feel a bit more like Miami than Stratford. And I'm trying to come to do I like it? Do I hate it? Can we work with it? It's something I want, the other commissioners to talk about in their reviews too, before we really iron out a recommendation. And then I do appreciate the landscaping. I mean, there's really not much in the way of what you could have done, since most of it is parking lot. But I did see in your plant schedule that you have a honey locusts spec'd, 4 of them. From my personal experience, I park under a honey locust at work. I don't care because my car is over 20 years old, but every day that thing is covered in sap and bees.
We actually like the honey locust because it doesn't afford protection for birds, and they don't nest in the honey locust, so there are no bird droppings on the cars.
That's fair. That's fair. Then you had a reason to back it up, so I'll ignore the honey locust sap and bees problem. I'd like to talk about the elevations we have here. On the north elevation, which is the facade fronting Lordship Boulevard, I think I remember something we had discussed last time this site came in front of us was that the, whatever you want to call them, the columns coming down did not make sense with, the building above. And here I feel like you did do that, and it makes, visual sense carrying the weight down along the front facade. However, when we travel to the east and west facades, because of the grade changes, they kind of get a bit spindly. We have nearly 18 feet between the grade and the ceiling. And I was wondering if there are any thoughts to that, if you could.
Yeah, they really
speak
can't
on
be
it.
any wider because the cars are parking between them. So if
Right.
you look at the site plan, you can see here, there's parking outside the line of the building, and you have to get either side of those columns to get to those parking spaces. That's why they are that dimension.
Right. I'm wondering that perforated panel that you presented, if there's any way to, I'm not sure how it would wrap, elevations, but sort of create baffles to bring, the proportion down. on the east and west,
Which,
if there's any room for that discussion.
so we need 14 feet minimum height at the pass-throughs to get a fire truck through.
Yep.
And then we've closed the other openings with the perforated material. So we're saying down in these locations, where we're just putting a car through, if we could put something there to bring this opening down, and I think we can accommodate that.
Okay, something that makes sense with, you know, the rest of the proportions. And then my last point I want to touch on is, you said in the site plan that you were seeking to create additional parking here?
From the approved plan, it's just restriping of the former loading dock into parking spaces.
So that already exists
It
as
already exists.
asphalt?
It already exists as asphalt.
Okay.
So there's really no change to the site plan relative to curbs, impervious surface, walkways, just restriping.
Okay. And I'd like to commend you on this little strolling garden that you're proposing. I think, you know, in terms of what this can be, that is a very nice gesture. But I will, you know, let the other commissioners speak. Thank you.
And I'll also mention that we added a sidewalk, a stair, and a crosswalk to get from the sidewalk on Lordship Boulevard to the main entrance of the building to increase, you know, pedestrian access
That's
to
excellent.
a bus stop.
So we don't,
That was a comment from last, when we were last before this board about pedestrian connectivity, so that was one of the changes.
that definitely sounds like
And we
something
didn't know
you would
about
say.
that, but we did that.
Yeah, okay.
John?
Yeah, I'll definitely echo Tom's comments. Again, while I appreciate the vibrancy, my niece lives down in Arlington, Virginia, and this would fit perfectly in city center there because I've been there many times. Not sure that the color scheming is appropriate for here. Relative to Tom's comments regarding the gray and then the pink, it's a little too flashy for me, I think. Again, like Jamie said, we're looking at everything you have to appreciate in the context of probably what I would say was one of the developments that we strongly liked the most right from the get-go. So I think that everything's being looked at through that lens. That being said, I think there are some elements that we've asked for in other developments that I really like to see. The visual screening of many of the parking areas underneath. Yes, it's understood it's parking, but you don't need to see the vehicles there. So things of that nature, I definitely appreciate you bringing into the development. Relative to the blue, I'll call it a panel, I'm really not sure what it is, that appears to be angled. It would be angled on the
yes.
structure. What is that, and is that going to be backlit? Because it looks like a feature that would be, and it kind of mirrors the numbers on the building. If you could speak to that.
So it is, it's the elevator shafts that extend up to the roof. It's not backlit, but it's front lit.
Okay. And the material type?
That is stucco, elastomeric stucco in that color. And I have the colors here.
So that, just, I'm looking at the plan, the elevators are slightly set back from there. It looks
Yes.
like every floor, it's a supply closet, actually, that is,
No, but the elevator shaft is set back
okay.
from that. So we have the,
Can you pull up one of the elevations quick? I just want to,
sure,
because I'm looking, for example, on the second floor plan, and I see that angle. Actually,
Yeah, so this whole element here is
Yep.
angled back. It steps, and I have a floor plan here.
Yeah, I'm referencing the second story floor plan, if you could, not the elevations, I'm sorry.
Okay, so you can see this angle right here,
Yep.
and this angle, which is the blue color, then when it straightens across here, that becomes glass into the elevator lobby.
Oh, okay, so it abuts a piece of glass, all right. And that's front lit, like you said, from the outside lights shining on
Correct.
that
From
structure.
the bottom up. The bottom of the lobby canopy on this setback, the lights are on the top of the roof overhang canopy of the first floor, shining up on that angled wall.
Okay. Yeah, and it looks like there's another angled piece below it, at least on the front page of the drawing set. Or just even on your cover,
Yeah,
the
I
cover
know.
page. Yeah, the white piece
It's not
there.
on the first floor. So, first floor, the whole first floor is set back 5 feet. The previous application that you saw, the first floor was flush out to the curb line of the
Okay.
driveway. So we set that back, so there's a covered walkway, and then there's a canopy that cantilevers out over here, and the angled wall begins above that. So it's
Okay.
not on the first floor, it's from the second floor up.
Okay, now I see it. I see it here. All right. Yeah, again, I appreciate some of the angles on the corners to add some aesthetics. I think the one thing that really struck me was the color. I really just had a hard time getting past that. When I opened the package, I opened it on my phone. We get the PDFs from Smith, and I was like, "Whoa, okay, this is certainly not like everything else." And I appreciate what you're going for here, because I'm a huge proponent. I mean, our plan of conservation and development has, at least the last version, we're currently writing the new one. It has more than just industrial down there, and certainly bringing a residential component in to help anchor that, even under 8-30G, I think is appropriate, and I think we're heading in the right direction here. I just don't know if the entire scheme, the color scheme, and the way it's put together, I'm not loving it. I'm not loving it. But other than that, like I said, all the other changes to the site plan, the addition of sidewalks, you've done the best with the trees and such. I really appreciate the work done on that.
I will also say, if we were designing a building of this size right next to, where we are here downtown, it wouldn't look anything like this. So we see this site as unique with, a real industrial thrust next to a fuel depot. I think this site can support these vibrant colors.
Quick question for Susmitha, I guess, before I end, Jamie, I'm sorry. So the original plan, and then presumably this pseudo-approved, which I still am kind of battling with why they're here. Are we going back to zoning, or
So if we didn't
because of the height?
Yeah, so if we didn't add a story, this
Yes.
building would be built in these colors, in this design that you saw the rendering of.
Okay.
Because it's approved. We're adding a story, so we're, for whatever, whether you saw it before or not, we're back to you because of this
But that's the
story.
8-30G, presumably, because Stratford typically is 5 stories, right? Under zoning regulations, 5 stories?
Yes, and in this case, the 8-30G helps you overwrite.
No, for sure. Yeah, no, I understand that completely. That's why I'm saying,
But
I
they
was-
did have a zone change too, and I
So
Okay.
think,
we filed, after we were here at ARB, we filed a zoning regulation, a zone text amendment that created, it's called the Lordship Boulevard Housing Zone.
Sure.
And so it's specific for here, and it had its own standards, including a height standard. So, if we progress over to P and Z after, we will file another text amendment regarding the height. And then, we don't need to change the zone, which we did last time.
Correct.
It's already in that
Yeah,
zone.
no,
So
I-
that would be the only.
I'm just speaking to the height because, again, having written the last POCD, I was the chairman of that commission at that time. One of the things we looked at was the appropriate height and massing of buildings in the area of Lordship. And you had indicated that the converted hotel, I guess, is that Empire 2? Empire 201 or 225, I think?
But yeah,
Yeah.
they're all 225. I don't know. It's Unit 2.
Yeah,
now.
that's,
Yeah.
that is 6 stories
It's 6
as it
stories.
stands?
Yeah, that's right. I don't have the picture anymore, but yes.
That's the one.
So it's going to match. it's
That's the
gonna
one
match
thing.
the
For
stories.
context, it's 6 stories? Okay, and as is the storage facility?
The storage facility, well, those stories are all different. The height of the storage facility, I believe, is 55 feet, I think. Or is it a little bit higher? Is it? Yeah,
Sure.
it's 55 feet if I
Well,
remember correctly.
the one thing I think we did struggle with last time is, and I'm not saying, I'm still battling with the 6 stories. I think it is a little high down there. I understand the hotel behind. That actually is a benefit, I think, in this case. That was one thing last time that we had battled with, is you would still see the other building, if you're at the right angle back, you'd see the other residential building peeking up behind it, and they weren't going to look anything similar to one another.
And
so.
and that's part of this as well. Is the difference is not as stark between the two buildings, I think.
Sure.
And then also, yeah, it's going to block that building. It's an existing building. There's only so much you could do with it. This is our chance to kind of put something that we feel is just a really beautiful front to this property. You also probably know that behind this site is probably the most unfortunate of uses that you could have behind your site, which is a transfer facility.
Yeah.
Part of when we went for the self-storage facility was trying to block that as well, the
Yeah,
view
sure.
of that. So in total, hopefully that's screened enough. And now when you drive along Lordship, you're going to see a brand new building here.
All right. I'm all set, Jamie. I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, Jamie Miller, Chair. So I tell you, I wanted kind of a little distressed, just like everybody, because we hadn't seen this before. But I'll tell you that I think you did generally speaking, I'm going to have some comments. I think you did a nice job with this building. And I think one of the things I'd like you to do, because I think the rendering actually doesn't do it justice, because can you hold up the stone sample with the gray above it? Because I think the rendering, when I look at this, right, it looks like a gray building from top to bottom. But when I look at your stone samples, which if I understand, and I want to be, one of my questions is about materials. Yeah, see, and I think the lightness of that, which if I understand properly, right, that's from the ground up to the bottom of the openings for the fire trucks and et cetera, correct? Is that material?
Everything here is the datum from the lobby level, 3 feet above the lobby floor down. So as
Oh, only 3 feet. All right, good.
So if there's glass, it's 3 feet above the lobby floor down. And then all of the walls that are not the exterior skin, like the stair towers that come down, the compactor room, that's all clad floor to floor, grade to floor with this material.
Okay. Okay, I got it.
So the openings don't matter. The 3 feet above the datum converts to the metal, but if it's a stair or a utility
Fully clad. And then the columns then, there's got to be columns that sit on top of that, correct? So above the 3-foot datum line, what is that?
That becomes the gray fluted metal.
Okay.
Because when we go, here we have a column, and then we have the perforated metal. So we want to have the same material perforated and unperforated, depending upon the specific application from that datum.
I hear you. So, and I get that. And so my reaction, so it's a little different than what I thought. And my reaction is, might you, considering everybody's weren't sure about the gray, and I'm actually okay with the gray. I'm wondering if that lower level could be the same material, but perhaps get a color that more ties into that. I mean, it's complementary, I understand, but maybe you're trying, maybe it could match that clearer, you know, so that that whole base, I think it would help when I look at the rendering, right, which looks entirely the same color, honestly, from top to bottom. And if I'm visualizing this right now, you know, those panels are still going to be in the gray, so that, you know, you only get little snippets of that. And I'm wondering if that whole base might be reconsidered. And you're shaking your head no, and you know the building better than I do, so.
Can I chime in?
Yes.
Can you hold up the perforated panel? It looks just very solid. In the
Yes.
rendering. That doesn't look solid to me.
So this one is, so the two would be
Sorry, I don't mean to.
No, it's fine. This is,
upper part of the building, solid, columns, solid, and then where we have the opening to the garage, it would be this arrangement.
and that would abut, oh no, actually it doesn't abut. The columns are done in that same solid material, in metal.
Because there's something solid behind them, it's a solid structure.
Correct, but, and they would, the only time they abut this,
It would be like this,
right, that's column to, and then underneath to the 3-foot level would be, yeah. So I'm actually believing, I believe in what you're going to say, but I'd like to hear, you quickly shook your head, no, you would not. So can you get into why you think that? I mean, and I'm not trying to argue with you, because I actually think you're going to have a better answer than me in 2 minutes looking at this, but.
we conceptualize the building as a taut skin made out of this metal material with punctures for the balconies and punctures for the openings for the cars that pass through. We're using the perforated metal where we need ventilation for, so that it's not an enclosed garage, and so that we can even, where the railings are, we're keeping that skin as a single plane, but perforations and not perforations. And when you get to a distance, it's going to read more solid, then you'll be able to make the distinction, we think, between the two materials. Introducing another color or shade
Defeats the purpose.
that whole intent that we're striving. To talk about the exterior color a little, we analyzed 3 options: white, metallic silver, and then this gray. The white was discounted because of its proximity to I-95 and pollution and
Sure.
dust, and it's not going to look white, and then there's going to be streaks of gray. Silver has become very ubiquitous. Reflections are, could be offensive, depending upon sun and certain times of the day. So that's why we landed with this gray. I appreciate the comment about a sea of asphalt, but the geometry of the building, I think, really will support this color.
Okay, so I have a few other questions.
Jamie,
as
can
far-
I ask a question quick? It couples right on that point. If you look on the cover page, it appears that blue stucco treatment is on each of those columns.
So that is,
So it's not actually that steel. Okay.
so these columns here have a recess in the metal. The back recessed about 4 inches. The back face of that recessed column is a metal paint in the same blue
Got it.
as this, and then
see it.
So it's not fully channeled like that. It's actually a
only the front columns, the Lordship Boulevard side face of those columns have that recess.
How wide is that?
I think it's 8 inches, I have it here, but then there's a vertical neon light in those. So the light is white, but it will reflect on the blue. And it's not providing real heavy sight lighting because the sight lighting is provided from the pole luminaires, but it's providing some articulation at each of those columns with a white neon strip 10 feet high, and then that blue background that will glow a little bit, which picks up this little element here. And
So it does break. To the chairman's point, it does break that up a little bit. It's just not solid gray all the way to the
Correct.
ground.
I believe that recess is 8 inches on the columns, but I'll double check.
That's okay. No, it's fine. It's fine. You don't dig too
Oh,
far
I've
for
got
that.
it- I've got it
I
here.
think we get the idea. There's a little recess in the column, and it's that metal for some distance on either side, and
It's
the
10 inches wide.
10 inches
10
wide.
inches wide, 10 feet, 4 inches high, and then the neon is 10 feet.
Okay.
And it is recessed 4 inches.
Okay. A few other questions about materials, just so the canopy
Yes.
and the edge of that, so what is that exactly? Is that done
That
in the
is
metal?
the edge of the canopy is composite aluminum panel, so a panel that doesn't oil can in the same gray.
In the same gray, okay.
We would have liked it to be exposed concrete, but you can't do that anymore.
I'm looking at elevations now, and I appreciate what you've done. So if up on the left at the pergola, so that pergola, you said you couldn't really see, and I see that the column is at an angle. Is that done in steel or something?
Yes,
Painted
that's a steel tube. It's a 10-inch high by 6-inch wide steel tube, mitered at that angle, and that it's a grid in both directions. It forms the pergola on the amenity roof deck. It's a purely decorative element, although
Yep.
there are downlights mounted at the intersection of those cross members.
Okay, and then I see where that pergola meets the building. There's a little triangular shaped piece of, is that mesh that I see?
Yeah.
Right there?
The face of the building is back here. The steel of the pergola goes all the way back to the building wall, and this angle here, this angle is the perforated metal.
Yeah.
It's just a facade wall there that carries down the
That's my
angular
next
element
question.
of the balcony.
So that it's an interesting little thing that's going on here. I follow that line. It happens in a couple of, even the pergola post, I think,
That's,
follows down
yes,
through.
the pergola
So
post is the same
Is
angle. It
the
follows down.
railings are the mesh, but in
Yes.
a couple of those balconies, you're saying that they have mesh that goes like kind of all the way up to the ceiling of that porch? Is that how
Yeah.
I'm reading that?
You can still see
See
around
through.
them, but some have wider and narrower
Yeah,
mesh
in a couple of
to
instances,
help
right?
animate the facade.
Okay. The red that I see in the balconies,
Yes.
what is that? Is that?
That's elastomeric stucco.
That's what I thought.
Not ephes, but stucco with an elastomeric color coating.
Okay. Yeah, I did go back and look, since the site plan is the same, I did go back and pull out some of our comments for the old design, and nothing to do with the actual building, but we had discussed a couple things. One of them was consider moving the building closer to the street. Now, maybe it's deceiving in site plan because you feel like these two buildings are so close together, but yet it's just kind of one story. The old
Yes.
hotel or whatever was, it's just one story there. And I think
This is the line of the actual tall.
the tall part is back there, so it's not going to feel quite. But I think where we were going, I believe this goes back a ways to February of 2022, is pulling this building forward because we tend to say we don't want the parking out on the street, So, look, I'm not asking you to go back and what was there any thought at all? Could this work if this building was pulled forward over the next group of parking?
No, that wouldn't work, and that's also why we pumped up the volume on the landscaping between Lordship and the parking.
Very fair.
It eliminated a lot of parking to do that, and that was that it took out a lot of parking spaces.
I think to echo my earlier point, though, part of that decision was also to block visually the hotel, which was going to be higher, because if it was set back and even closer, we wanted it so as you're driving down the street, all you were going to see was this building,
Right.
not be able to see over it if it was set back.
And pulling the building forward now that, it's much taller.
Right.
I don't think is the best idea.
Is probably not the best. Understand. I'm just going through. And we also talked about sidewalks along Watson Boulevard, which I'm not really sure why, if there's really a reason for that at all. I mean, if you're going to the back building
You would
and you're
walk
walking,
through it. You would walk through the site.
yeah, you'd walk right around the lobby that comes down, because I see a sidewalk that wraps around that. You'd come through that same main sidewalk, and if you're coming to that building. Okay. Yeah, so I think, my opinion is actually, I think this is, it doesn't quite have the articulation of the front facade that the other building did, I guess, but it still has the recesses of the porches, and I think that, it's one of these buildings in this spot. I happen to like it, and I think that there's a bunch of people in town that are going to drive by that and say, "What in the world have you done?" They're going to see me and know what my involvement is, and they're going to say, "How could you let them?"
But it's the right location for
Yeah,
it.
it really is. I think everything about it. Look, we're not here. You made a big spiel about the 830G application, and really that's not our thing. And nor frankly is. Well, no, it is, I guess. The fact you need a variance for the height or whatever. I mean, all those things. We're looking at the aesthetics of the building and how does it fit into that area. And I would say that, you did a really interesting and nice job on this building. And I didn't want to start out saying that, and it grew on me. So I commend you. I think you did well.
Thank you.
Okay, so how this works, is we are still going to, we pass along and we give some recommendations. I think Tom's been taking notes, and I know there's not a whole lot necessarily, but
I only have one that I wrote down, and I'm not sure how important.
I apologize.
I'm sorry. Yep.
Because now you triggered me bringing up the old application. Just because you have created that walking area in the existing space, I would still say there has to be some sort of defined pathway from this new structure to that, at least brought into the parking area. Yeah, yeah. Just so there's a defined area that residences from this new front building, it's clear, you know what I mean? This is an area I want to go visit, I want to be able to get there.
So you walk out the back door of the building.
Yep,
You have a sidewalk that gets you to this area.
Yep.
You have these crosswalks here, and then crossing this driveway, which is not a heavily active roadway. It's just,
yeah, I'm just thinking something, I mean, even if it's stamped
well, we could do the same.
pavement, something, a little area that really shows
to that.
this is all a development now and connected.
We are using pavers,
Sure.
12 12 by 12 triangular pavers, not stamped concrete.
Yep, all right,
We could
that's
do-
fine.
We could do some of that to get.
You know what I'm saying? Just to really bring this whole thing together. It's still being developed in the same area.
Yeah.
2 residential units. There's some commonality between them.
We're agreeable to that.
Sure. Thanks, Jamie.
Okay, no, so, yep.
The only 2 things I have written down are to add perforated metal paneling at the east and west elevations to decrease the height of the open facade bays, and then incorporate pavers from lobby area to the new garden.
Crosswalk, a crosswalk with pavers.
Okay.
Similar to the crosswalk between Lordship Boulevard and the new building.
All right, so is that a motion, that's,
Yes, that's a motion.
all right, so Tom has made is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, gentlemen,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much.
Good evening.
You know, good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate your openness to looking at a different version of it, and really appreciate that. Thank you.
That's why I kept emailing and asking you if these 2 are same, and you said they both are exactly same, and I showed Jay, and he didn't tell me about October 22nd,
Oh, the
2022
22nd,
submission,
yeah.
so he felt, it felt like it was a totally new submission.
Okay, just great. Well,
We
well,
weren't lying to you. It was approved.
it did go to P&Z.
You would just be more surprised to see it built if we weren't back
Yeah, if we were
looking
back
for another
here.
story.
That's right, that's right. Glad we could bring it up.
Okay, so are there any, what time is it? Are there any members' comments? There better be something really important if you better go over it. It's 8:45. I'm starving. So, if there's no members' comments, is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?